Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next hit of Between the Lines, our World Rugby VOD/podcast crossover. I'm Sean Maloney, and joining me for the next little bit, it's a very, very interesting guest. It is Richie Gray, a man who has covered the world on the coaching front, who joins us all the way from, is it sunny Scotland? I'm sure it must be sunny somewhere in Scotland right now.
It'll be sunny somewhere, but I'm not too sure if it's here. But usually we're waiting for a couple of days of summer. It's about the back end of July, so yeah, sun's always a bonus.
Somewhere it is. Somewhere it'll be sunny, and it's going to be sunny for the next little bit here, mate. I can't wait to hear the insight that you can offer up around your time coaching around the world. More recently, you've dived into the contact area specifically with World Rugby. We'll come back to that, but firstly, give us an idea as to how you've come to be in that position.
Oh, geez, it's an interesting story. Well, I suppose I'm 50 years old now, so 50 turned 50 about 6 or 7 weeks ago. Although age means very little, but started off as a physical education teacher, as a lot of coaches do, but never ever taught. Went straight into rugby union a year before it went professional. Did 12 years with the Scottish Rugby Union, development, coach education, academies, pretty much the same sort of education that a lot of sort of my peer group have had as well. And then obviously got the chance to go into full-time professional coaching with the Border Reivers, which was one of the professional teams in Scotland. And then after that, off we went. Sadly, after about 3 or 4 years, we all lost our jobs. The whole franchise got put on ice, and 55 of us lost our jobs. So it was maybe a good wake-up call to professional sport. But from then on, I just kind of went my own way. So I was always a forwards stroke defence coach, and I decided that I thought the whole area of contact was only going to become more and more important. Especially with the conditioning of the players and also the detail that was going into the systems, especially in defence and attack. I thought there was only going to be mere contacts. So that's what happened. I decided to only look at contact and collision. Many people thought I was start raving mad and thought I'll never get a job. But since then, pretty much my company, I've obviously created a company called GSI Performance, which pretty much relates to anything to do with collision. So that's training equipment, methodology and coaching. And it's seen me go all over the world. Rugby union obviously is my number one and always will be, but heavily involved in American sport with the NFL, American football, and I've also touched on rugby league as well. So it's been a great journey, and one which I'm really lucky because you can use all these different ideas and you come up across so many different innovations in each sport that there is a massive amount of crossover. So I consider myself very lucky that I'm in this position, but you've pretty much sort of gone out and made it your own, really, because I never planned to work like this, but this is what we're in now. So,
well, here you are. Over your left shoulder, you've got the Miami Dolphins jersey. I'm pretty sure that is. Yeah, the 47 Dolphins jersey. Take me to the NFL and run me through what you had to do with them over there in Florida.
Yeah, it was a strange one because I'd been sent by the Scottish Rugby Union many years ago to go down and join the Stormers for about 6 or 8 weeks in Super Rugby because we were looking at academy systems and whatever. And Alan Solomons was the head coach of the Stormers then, so that was in the time of Skinstad and Corny Krieger, Robbie Kempson. They're a great group there. But the physiotherapist there was a man called Wayne Diesel, great name. Wayne Diesel was the head physio. And I always followed Wayne from then on, and he became heavily involved in high performance, and he was with Tottenham Hotspur. He worked with the Springboks as well. So it was the morning of the semi-final of the World Cup. We were about to play New Zealand in the 2015 World Cup, and I got a phone call in my room. We were based, obviously, in London. And here was Wayne Diesel, and he said, "Listen, Rich, I'm now the head of high performance at Miami Dolphins. Would you like to come and work with the coaches for maybe 3 or 4 days just on tackle technique?" And I said, "Listen, I would love that." So I went out after the World Cup, and then one thing, as usual in American sport, one thing led to another. We had a great first week. How do you fancy coming back next month and doing another 5 days? And then all of a sudden I ended up signing up for the whole year. I was in about 7 to 10 days every month working with the coaches, but specifically the linebackers. So that jersey behind me there, number 47, is Kiko Alonso, who is now with the New Orleans Saints, but he was a linebacker in that group, and just a phenomenal experience to be involved in that sort of whole setup, not just through coaching and technique and the way that they develop their game, but how the whole sport works. It's just an absolute monster, and incredible learnings from there, and incredibly detail orientated. The players work. I've never seen players work as hard. The hours they put in, the coaches, because they all know that if you're not front and you'll be out the door, and somebody else will be brought in. So it's a really, really tough school.
What about tackle technique? What did you need to coach NFL players around tackle technique? Because for large parts, when you're watching it on, and many people do watch both rugby and NFL as well, they can get their heads into some really awful positions. How did you refine that for the Dolphins?
Yeah, I think over the last sort of 5 or 6 years, and it's been well documented, there's been a lot of discussion on shoulder tackling in American football. The whole Seahawks with Pete Carroll and the group there did a huge job on the sort of promotion of it. Rocky Seto was a real kind of advocate of the whole shoulder tackle system, because it hadn't really been one that had been used in football. It was very much face-to-face, head guard to head guard. No wonder the sport had challenges when it came to concussions and the way they trained, because it was absolutely brutal, and it was literally face-to-face. It was like when you looked at some of it. I remember one coach said to me it was about putting your triangle on their triangle, and I said, right, explain to me. He said, well, the triangle's nose, eye, and you've got to stick it onto their triangle, so you're thinking, man, oh man. So you've got these collisions happening with huge men, massive monsters of people. So detail and technique was never a huge priority. It was just more the stopping of momentum any way you could, whether that be throwing your shoulders in, launching your body at ankles. So no wonder the sport had problems. Now, obviously, padding and helmets disguised it to some point, but as usual, and we were the same in rugby, we were training it the wrong way, and obviously that's why our sport as well had problems back then. I'd like to think it's a lot safer now, and I know that football has become a lot safer. It's possibly safer than it's ever been, but we didn't know that back then. So 15, 20 years ago when you were training, bone on bone, every day, every session, no wonder we had problems. So football, as you possibly know, are governed now. The CBA are the kind of players' union. There's limited contact time, which in my opinion brings around its own challenges, because if you're not actually coaching it and you're not doing it live week in, week out, then sometimes I think that can affect the technique of the player. So, and you got to remember, a lot of these NFL guys will finish in December. They won't live tackle again until, May, June. So you're looking at about a 15 to 20 week break, which is huge. So technical training aids are becoming really important. The way you train it, the way you try and keep yourself game ready. But the biggest thing I've taken away from what we can take to football is definitely technique and precision and accuracy. Without a doubt, that's key. But you've then got to learn the game as well, and that's a whole different world.
Yeah, well, I reckon that's a perfect segue into my next question. So we had a former NFL punter come out, Marquette King, during the week saying that he could cross over into rugby and dominate easily, and it drew, I'm going to say, ridicule from most parts of the rugby world, saying, come on, fella, you're a punter firstly, and secondly, that just wouldn't happen. If you were to pick a couple of current day or even ex-NFL players, rather, that you were looking after going back a couple of years to come over to rugby and do well, and then a couple of rugby players to go to NFL and excel, who would you think could get that done?
Yeah, it's a good one, right? It really is. And it's funny, I've been asked this question a lot, especially by some of the guys that I coach, that have said, listen, do you think I could cope in the NFL? What position do you think you could go into? The the biggest challenge that any player would have coming from one sport to the other, either rugby NFL or NFL to rugby, would be the understanding of the game, you know, because the game of football, as it's called, you know, if you've not been used to that and brought up in it, it's a huge amount of work for the rugby player to get their head around that. Huge amount of work. And also, you got to remember, you're up against players that have been working on techniques for years, so they're incredibly refined. And to be honest, they would make a rugby player look pretty silly to start with. But at the end of the day, if you're the certain shape, physically conditioned, and obviously you're willing to learn, there is no reason why you can't move over. Now, I think, in my opinion, the whole linebacker area that I really enjoyed working with in Miami is incredibly similar to our back row type shapes, 6, 7, 8s, very similar sort of positions. So I think that those players could move over quite easy. Defensive backs, running backs, receivers, definitely there's a crossover. You know, at the end of it's a great thing about rugby, isn't it? We've got a sport that caters for all shapes and sizes. Football, in some ways, the same, but their size is just slightly bigger than ours, especially when you're looking at your O-line and D-line. There's some absolute monsters in there. And those guys would really struggle with rugby because our sport continues, it doesn't stop. So we could be playing for a minute and a half, whereas theirs is 0 to 5 seconds of mayhem, you know. I always say it's like human chess, American football, played at 100 miles an hour. So, you know, they can cope with that massive explosion of energy and power and detail. To carry it on for a minute and a half, I think a D lineman would be carried off the field in rugby, you know. And obviously, if we put a rugby guy into that D line, you know, it would be a real culture shock for them as well. So I think there's certain positions could definitely cross over. Don't get me wrong, the NFL has got possibly some of the most phenomenal athletes I've ever seen, and there's so many of them, you know. But they are two totally different sports. And I always say to my friends in America that rugby's rugby, football's football. They're totally different. People always think, oh, you know, rugby could come and save football and the whole technique thing. There's crossovers, but the sports are very, very different. So to go back to your question, key players, you know, I think your running backs, your linebackers, defensive backs could cross over quite easily into rugby union. I think in rugby union, a player like a sort of Jamie Roberts type size centre, big centres would work well. Definitely your Vermeulens, players like that could fit into that linebacker role quite easily. And then, you know, if you've got a real power, strong, fast stepper, you know, they could fit into that position as well. So there's definitely a crossover. It'd be really interesting. And remember, there's been quite a few rugby guys have gone to NFL. It's mainly been kickers, to be honest. A lot of the Australians have gone and done a good job across there in the NFL. But there's the big lad Gray, who plays, I think, for the Atlanta Falcons. He played for England under 20s, Alex Gray. And also the lad that went to Buffalo Bills this year. I'm trying to remember, really fast player. Played it, I think he was out of Wasps.
Is it Christian Wade?
Christian Wade, yeah. So Wade played brilliantly in the first sort of 2 or 3 friendlies, but they never kind of made it through. So the competition is massive. And I couldn't believe sometimes you'd be coaching a player and then the next morning you turn up and say, where's number 26 going? Oh, he missed 3 tackles yesterday. He's gone. We've brought another guy in. And it's like, just brutal, you know. So, and listen, it's the same for the coaches.
Yes.
You know, if your stats and your percentages aren't working,
out you go.
It's show the door. And it's incredible how they do it because you obviously get told late at night, so there's no emotion to it. So literally in the camps, there'll be pretty much an envelope put under your door at 9:30 at night. All your clothing is in your room. When you go to the facility, you change in your locker, so there's nothing that you own, and you're on a plane and you're gone. So there's no sort of, oh, I'm really sorry to hear that you're going to be leaving on Friday. There's none of that. You're gone. So it was incredible. It really was, and brilliant to be involved in. And I've obviously since then I've been back and forward quite a lot. I've been involved in the college system as well, which is even bigger than the NFL. I always naively thought that college sat under NFL. NFL's the showboat, but colleges, geez, it's just 100,000 turning up at a Michigan home game, and they've never not sold their stadium out for the last 15 years. It's incredible numbers.
It is. One guy who has sort of made a semi-transition from, it was actually arena football to rugby, was Perry Baker of the USA, two-time World Rugby Sevens Player of the Year. I know you've got a lot of experience in the world of sevens. What did you coach the Blitzboks around in terms of contact in that form of the game where there's more room to move? What are the key things that you taught the Blitzboks?
Yeah, I think I was really lucky because when I went and worked with the Springboks, really sevens was really on the cards, but I've always enjoyed sevens. I come from the Borders. Melrose is 4 miles down the road from my house. It's the home of sevens. It's where it all started. So I've always been brought up with sevens. So when I had the chance there, I just used to say, listen, on my off day, I'm quite happy to go and work with the sevens team, and any time I can get down there and help them out. And Neil Powell, Marius Schumann were both involved. Great, just first and foremost, great people, but just really, really progressive coaches. And it was a time where South Africa had a phenomenal group of sevens players, but they were not the biggest. They were not a huge team. When you look at Cecil Africa, Branko Dupree, Roscoe Speckman, even Kyle Brown, they weren't a massive stature in team. So we had to decide on making them incredibly accurate and fast. To cope with the Fijis and the New Zealanders, we had to make them incredibly fast and accurate. So pretty much we changed the whole way that we trained, and it was brutal. Some of the sessions, fatigue-based sessions into skill and detail, were pretty much kind of went into folklore. But I'm saying that, the boys, you're only as good as the players you've got, and I've always said that about coaching. The players, with guys like Frankie Horn there were some real senior drivers of standards and culture. Quagga Smith. So it was actually a team that just about dragged themselves through. The harder it got, it was like a bigger challenge to them. A phenomenal attitude, and they still have that. They've really, and that's down to the culture that Neil Powell and the whole Sevens Academy have created, and that goes below as well. So detail, speed and accuracy in everything we did around contact. One bullet, one kill, we used to call it, and that was it. You had one bullet, one kill. That was it. You had one chance. You couldn't miss.
I tell you what, they fire a lot of bullets when they play as well. They don't often walk away on the wrong side of the scoreboard.
No, they're incredible characters, like Justin Gould and Cornel Hendricks was involved as well, Warren Whiteley, and also it's been great is the sevens, and this is my own opinion, the sevens when it first started was a little bit of a sort of add-on, it was way back when it first started. The players that played it were players that maybe just quite hadn't made it at 15, so they decided to go to sevens. Now, that's completely changed. The sevens has become an absolute factory for putting players through into top clubs, senior teams, international teams. You think of the number of players now that have been capped by the Springboks that have come through the sevens setup. So, and remember, our game at 15s is only going to get faster and more accurate. So the way we train sevens, I used to use it as a sort of, how would I describe it? It was like my lab for creating contact, attack and defensive techniques and systems that I would work on there, then take them into the 15s game. So it became a little bit of a sort of experimentation because it was always pretty much one-on-one in sevens. You had to be so accurate. But if you could get that bit right and then move it on into the 15s where you had more numbers, it worked really well. So over the 3 years, we developed a lot of different things through the sevens that were taken into the 15s.
Okay, let's stay with that. That's a perfect lead into my next question. What are you doing right now in terms of your work with World Rugby, and how are you imparting your knowledge into contact and the breakdown to, I guess, make it a quicker and safer game for everyone to play?
It was great in some ways. Kind of one thing led to another, and I'd created a whole system for rugby relating to the tackle. I just thought that we talk about we're a tackling sport, but I don't particularly think we have a tackling culture. We don't have a tackle culture within our sport, which we should have. And everybody talks about the tackle and says that, it's incredibly important. The tackle's the thing that's the biggest challenge for our sport, which is 100% correct. We've got the stats that back it up. We've got a huge amount of data out there. There's been a lot of science put into it, which has been brilliant. And it's helped guys like myself as a coach take the science and then try and work it into something that we're going to put onto the field. But I still don't think we've got this tackle culture where the minute I walk into a building, I see, tackle jumping out of the walls. It's in the gym. Where is it? And it's a really interesting one because we talk about it a lot, but I don't see it. And, I've got a young lad who's 9 years old who's just started tackling. And a lot of parents now, it's like, I don't want to coach that part of the game. We'll leave that to you. There's like a real fear round about coaching tackling because of the media and because what's been said about it and the chance of injury and the risk of concussions. And there's a real fear in it. And not just in our sport, in all collision sports, it's kind of come and hit us. So I think first we need to create this tackle culture. So when I got in touch with World Rugby, I'd already created a system called the 5 Fights, which was to do with the tackle. And USA Football had taken that and put it into schools and youth across the US for American football. So it was actually developed for rugby first, but funnily enough, football got it mainly because of my tie-in with Miami and the time I'd spent in America. So we footballified it. And then it was sitting there. All the work had been done. It had been broken down into KPIs, the key areas of the tackle. So then we sat down in World Rugby and thought, right, could we do the same? I think the tackle needs a real sort of revolution in the way we coach it. So we sat down, put that together, and that's Tackle Ready that will come out hopefully in August, September with World Rugby. 5 key areas, the KPIs that relate to them all, and just a different way to coach and develop the tackle from an early age right the way through. So that was the link. And then obviously since then, the breakdown group got brought together, and that's just grown arms and legs in the last sort of 3 months. So we've been pretty busy with that.
How did you think that, obviously, first rugby we saw back was Super Rugby Aotearoa over in New Zealand. What were the changes that you saw in the way that was being officiated? And do you think that's kind of the way that we should be heading as a whole across the globe?
I think, and again, it's my own opinion, so you have to back yourself. I just think that our game is at a real crossroads at the moment, because when I watch it, and you've got to look at it from both sides. I'm a coach, but I'm also a supporter because I love watching it every weekend, and I was a player. So you've been heavily involved in it. And I get really excited about going to watch this game of rugby, and then all of a sudden, after 25 minutes, it's the same as I saw last week, and it's the same as I saw the week before. And I'm thinking we've got to do something here. And for me, team collision sports, that they're only going to get, or we should be aiming to only make them faster, more accurate, more exciting, so that we've got people on the edge of their seats watching them. We're in, as somebody once said to me, we're in the entertainment business at the very, very top level. We are. You still can't forget there's a whole community game there as well that just want to play and just want to enjoy their sport. But at the very top level, we've got a real challenge to create a sport that people want to come and watch. And I just thought over the last 2 or 3 years, it was getting rather loose in certain areas, especially in and around the whole breakdown tackle contest. And it's funny, I've got a lot of friends that are not rugby that'll say to me, I watched a game of rugby at the weekend, I couldn't work out what was going on. There was guys coming in from all sides, and there didn't seem to be any, and they were right, and the whole breakdown area was just becoming just too ragged for me, and the minute that happens, you're going to get injury. And that's exactly what was happening. I've been in France for the last 3 years working with Montpellier, and you see it firsthand. There's players getting their knees, blown out with guys coming in at 65, 70 degrees in the rucks, and you're thinking, this can't be right. We've got to sort this out. So, I think that was the key thing. One, I just want to make the game faster. I want to make it more accurate. I want to make it a great spectacle. but also you got to keep and look after the healthier players or they won't have a game. And sometimes they're the last guys that are asked, coaches and referees having all these meetings and the poor players are then asked to go through the mill. So I think that's been the beauty of this over the last sort of 3 or 4 months, due to the whole situation that we're in. We wouldn't have had this time to be so thorough on what we've done. And so all of a sudden, the group was brought together, players, coaches, referees, and we're continually speaking even at the moment. And what you've seen is in the first 2 weeks of the New Zealand competition is some real subtle changes to the way that the whole breakdown areas refereed. And when it first came out, people thought, oh, well, there's no law changes, so it must just be sort of the same as before. And that's been the beauty of it. We've not actually need to make any law changes. It's just the way that they're going to be interpreted and the way that they're going to be refereed. And when you watch the first 2 games, yeah, there's been more penalties, because I'll tell you what, it's a huge shift for players and coaches on what we're now actually looking for. And that's been the key. And, I always look at pictures. I think, and I've spoken to many, many coaches, as has most of the coaches that have been involved in this group, Joe Schmidt, Ian Foster, Russell Earnshaw, and then most of the referees as well, all around the world, have all been involved. And I always try to keep it as simple as possible. I think that's the best way to go, is keep it as simple as possible. So pretty much what you're trying to do now as a player, as a coach, your team, is just give 5 really clear pictures to the referee. The picture in and around the tackle, the picture in and around that first arriving player, the jackler, as we call it, the picture in and around the ball carrier, the picture of driving through the ruck and not falling on the other side, so staying on your feet, and the picture of angle of entry. So you think it's difficult for coaches and players. Imagine how difficult it is for the referee at the moment, because they're having to think, right, I have to be far sharper here on these kind of 5 key areas. So at the moment, I'm watching this as a coach, and I think the refs are doing a great job. Usually what happens is it's refereed really strongly, and then it starts to sort of slacken off through the tournament. This won't happen. We're going to stay on it. And the great thing is, we've got a tournament in front of us, and the Australians obviously start playing this weekend as well. So we're going to get some really good feedback from these subtle changes that we've made. And if we think that there's maybe one of them in there that needs to just be tweaked slightly, then I'm sure we're all, enough to put the hands up and go, okay, let's just make a slight little change there. But on the whole, in the first 2 weeks, you've seen a really big shift. And when we get it right, it speeds the game up. Without doubt, it speeds the game up.
Well, fingers crossed that the Aussies can do right by you and the rest of the crew in terms of what you've tweaked over the last few months. I think the New Zealanders, like you say, have done a terrific job of picking it up and running with it. And fingers crossed, mate, we get to see some rugby back on the park soon too.
I think you're right. And you know what I like about the New Zealanders, and it's always been their way, and it's a real strength of them, and also as their coaches and their players and as a nation. And I've spoken to a number of the New Zealand coaches over the last 4 or 5 weeks. It's like a real, right, here's a challenge. Let's not moan and groan about this. Let's be the best we can be at this. This is what we've got to play in. Here's the parameters. Let's work on it and let's make a difference. Instead of, I don't like this, I'm not liking that. And it's a really positive mindset. And I've even heard it from the media as well, which has been great. You've got people on the sidelines that understand completely what we're trying to do. And there's been some really positive sort of chat out there, which you have to, and let's be honest, we're all in this together. And we just want a dynamic, fast, exciting game. And also one that's going to look after our players, because if we've not got the end, then we're all out of a job, So I've just been really impressed with the first 2 weeks. And I think the refs, if they can just keep on, working hard, and everybody understands that they've got a job to do as well, let's make it as easy as possible for them and just paint these pictures, then we're on the right road.
I think we certainly are, and we thank you, Richie Gray, for sharing your experience and time with us over the last little bit. And as I said earlier, mate, let's hope that we get some footy up in your end of town sooner rather than later.
Let's hope so, because to be honest, I can only do so many Zoom calls before I blow up. So I'm lucky. I live just on the edge of my town, so every day I'm into the hills because I think I would have to. I'm going to go stir crazy here. So just get me back to coaching as quick as possible.
We'll let you go hit the hills now. Thanks again, Richie Gray.
Thank you. Cheers, guys. Thanks very much.